Kia ora, talofa, namaste, haere mai, big it up, and welcome to the Niche Case Variety Show for this week. We'll be delivering Aotearoa smorgasbord of sporting nuggets. Just shit to spin a yarn about, We spin a yarn, so then you can spin a yarn. So you got a few more surfboards in your quiver, a few more moves in your repertoire, a few more ingredients in your pantry to spin those yarns, whether you're around the bucky in a garage, whether you're at the bar after a game, or maybe you're just out on a hike and you're just with your mate chatting about Aotearoa sports. However you do it, however you get it, however you want it, we're here to spin a kōrero about Aotearoa sport. Prior to this, we've done a big old Patreon podcast zoning in on Aotearoa cricketing matters. So big it up all the Patreon whānau who support us first and foremost. Patreon.com/our niche case. That is the best way to support the niche case and our Aotearoa sporting content. And then you also get an extra cricketing-focused, cricket-centric podcast where we are previewing Aotearoa's 3-0 sweep of England in the upcoming Test series. Every Monday and Friday, we also dispatch an email newsletter via Substack. Sign up, thenichecase.substack.com. All these links are in the description, and the email banger just has all the Niche Case content straight to your email. The podcast, links to our yarns, as well as current eventy type of yarns for the Monday and Friday email bangers. So sign up to that. Sign up to the Patreon whānau if you can, if you want to as well. Otherwise, just check in on the daily to our website, theniche-case.com, big Aotearoa sports yarns to read about. And that's where we live every day. So just check in, tap in, and enjoy the content. We start our podcast with a dose of mindfulness. Wildcard, please serve it up.
Yeah, this one is uncredited. I don't know who said it. It's just one of those things that people quote that I heard quoted without a reference, but it goes, enlightenment is ego's final disappointment.
Does uncredited mean you just made it up? Like you were just out on your...
It means someone else might have made it up. I didn't, but I don't know who did.
You should have just said you made it up when you're out on your gone out for walkabouts. But your mindfulness was enlightenment is the death of ego.
Enlightenment is ego's final disappointment.
Enlightenment is ego's final disappointment. I imagine that's because you're overcoming the ego, and your ego death is a term that's used quite a bit, and you're shuffling the ego aside to bring your soul power to true buzzword manifestation.
Yeah, but also the one thing I quite like about that is it doesn't say like it's not ego's final breath or final, like it doesn't, the ego death thing is a really common thing as you've mentioned, but like this doesn't strictly say death, it says disappointment. It's like you don't kill the ego, it just is disappointed. And I guess that also probably tells you that maybe the achieving of enlightenment is not actually an achievement. Like you quest for something and then you get there and it's like, well, if I achieve something, if I've done something like to celebrate, well, that's the ego, right? So actually it's sort of like stepping away from that and realizing that you haven't actually like completed a journey. You've just sort of like, I don't know,
found something,
dropped it. Yeah. But not even found something, because that's an achievement too. Like that's something that your ego would feel a reward from. Here's like, it's actually no reward. It's actually just like some inner peace thing that you probably had all along. And probably when you find it, it's not going to be like, party time, it's not going to be a big celebration. It's like, because that would defeat the purpose of being enlightened, right? It's just a tricky, I don't know what it is, because I can't tell you that I'm an enlightened being myself. I try, but I definitely not there. And if I was there, I probably wouldn't be able to tell you about it for this exact reason, because enlightenment is ego's final disappointment.
If we do ever get a tangible manifestation of enlightenment, we'll be sure to let you let the listener and let each other know in the podcast realm. Let's crack into Aotearoa Sports Wildcard. Leading the show, bit of a take, bit of a sizzler, bit of a pondering that we've had from the past week or so. What is in your headline status for the variety show this week, Wildcard?
Yeah, how about this one? Bill Tuiloma is the secret weapon for the All Whites in their upcoming intercontinental playoff against Costa Rica. And it's definitely a secret because I don't actually know for certain that he is going to be a starter in that game. It's probably between him and Michael Boxall for the third CB spot, and traditionally that would be Michael Boxall who'd get that selection. But Tuiloma is in the form of his life right now, and his presence at the OFC qualifiers when Boxy wasn't there maybe just tips it in his favor. This is, of course, assuming that they play a back three. If they don't, then it'll just be Reid and Pinecker, I suspect, and neither Boxall nor Tuiloma would play. But regardless, Tuiloma is a guy who I think, for the reasons I'm about to illuminate, is someone who probably would feature off the bench anyway, particularly in a close game. Because here's the thing about Bill Tuiloma. He has scored 4 goals in his last 13 MLS games this season. He also scored 3 for the All Whites in qualifying and Oceania stuff. So that makes it 7 goals in his last 15 games for club and country. He had never scored for the All Whites prior to last October. He had scored exactly 1 goal in each of his first 4 MLS seasons. This has been like a goal-scoring explosion from the guy, but the Portland Timbers, this is also not a coincidence because the Timbers have figured something out about him, and the All Whites, I don't think, are very far behind in terms of figuring this out. So that something is that Billy T is an absolute menace from set pieces. So 3 of those 4 MLS goals this season have been headers. The other was a direct free kick that he took himself. Plus, he scored a free kick in preseason for the Timbers, and his 3 qualifying goals for the All Whites, all headers from corners. And you watch the goals back, you see the highlights. It's nuts. He's not the tallest guy in the penalty area, but he just consistently leaps higher than anyone else. He's just got like these bloody mad hops, and he gets powers on his head, regardless of like the angle that he approaches at, whether he's diving forward or jumping up or leaning back or whatever. He seems to get the same amount of strength on. So he's obviously got some pretty powerful, neck muscles and all that kind of thing as well. And Portland, they've got to the point where they're just straight up searching for him in those areas. Like, he's the number 1 target. They win a free kick, cross it in towards Tuiloma. Costa Rica, they're a notoriously good defensive team, and they're going to know what they're doing from set pieces. But at the same time, like the All Whites, they have Chris Wood, they have Winston Reid. They also have Bill Tuiloma, and it's different gravy to what you might be coming up against in the CONCACAF stuff. So without Ryan Thomas or Sarpreet Singh in this Costa Rica game, open play creativity probably going to be a little bit tricky for the All Whites to muster, especially against such a good, well-organized defensive team. So set pieces are going to have to be a focus anyway. And it just so happens that the All Whites have a bona fide set piece beast ready to be unleashed in this game in Mr. Bill Tuiloma, the secret weapon for this match.
Big up the also Bill Tuiloma, and big up the also Isaiah Papali'i. I'm going to say he's my favorite Kiwi-NRL player right now, career best form with the Parramatta Eels, and I'd also say the Parramatta Eels are my favorite Kiwi-NRL team right now, especially after their most recent performance. Isaiah Papali'i, all his stats are better than last year when he was one of the best edge forwards. He was awarded the best edge forward in the NRL. Dylan Brown, career best form. It also saw the return of Marata Niokore, and we've also got Makahisi Makatoa from New Plymouth coming off the bench, and of course Hayes Perham doing a job on the wing. In fact, I'd also chuck Bailey Simonson back in that mix as well, because he's on the wing as well. So they've got 2 Kiwi-NRL wingers. They've got a fantastic half in Dylan Brown. They got my favorite player, Isaiah Papali'i. So just putting the Parramatta Eels and their Kiwi-NRL crew on a pedestal there to celebrate them, because they are the funkiest Kiwi-NRL team, and they're the Kiwi-NRL team I always have to watch. They got great numbers. What did I say? 6 maybe in that group, and high quality players who are playing their best footy. And don't get me started on player development, because Papali'i, Dylan Brown, Hayes Perham, Bailey Simonson, all these dudes are getting better. Niokore, Makatoa, they all get better every season at the Parramatta Eels. So big it up to them. And my favorite Kiwi-NRL team and player, Isaiah Papali'i. Drop a stat here, Wildcard, to enlighten us and leave our ego disappointed.
There are definitely some Newcastle egos that will be disappointed by the first stat that I'll roll out here, which is that Chris Wood scored 2 goals in 17 matches for Newcastle this season, which took him to 4 in total, and he scored a couple with Burnley before that. And that snaps his 4-season streak of having scored 10-plus goals in the Premier League. So, no, it's not ideal there. Callum Wilson coming back from injury, like his injury was the impetus for them to sign Chris Wood in the first place. He's come back from injury the last couple of games of the season. He scored a double against Burnley on the weekend to actually help relegate old mates Burnley. More like there's as many goals in one game for Callum Wilson coming back from injury a couple games after he came back. But as many goals in one game as Chris Wood scored all season for Newcastle, well, half a season that he was there for. So, in that line, pretty disappointing signing, right? Is Chris Wood failure at Newcastle is just probably what some people will be saying, certainly. I'm saying that depends how you look at it, because if you're just basing things purely on goals scored, sure, it's not pretty, but if you're looking at the overall impact that the man had, well, suddenly things open up a little bit more, because 32 of the total 49 points in Newcastle achieved this season came in the 17 games that Chris Wood featured in. So 32 points from 17 games in which Chris Wood played, 17 points from 21 games in which Chris Wood did not play. The team's XG differential, so XG for minus XG against, was plus 2.0 with Chris Wood playing, which was the best in the entire Newcastle squad. They're just XG in terms of like XG created, goal scoring, attacking opportunities themselves, was 0.92 points better when Chris Wood was on the pitch versus when he was off the pitch, which is tied first for Newcastle alongside fellow January signing Matt Targett. Looking at stats from that perspective, suddenly Chris Wood is not at all a failure or a disappointment at Newcastle. Suddenly Chris Wood is actually turning out to be one of the undercover most important players in that team, which is what I've been, trying to point out all along. Although bonus stat here is, something I regret to report here, but he did not manage to regain his golden flag for offsides this season, for the most offsides in the Premier League. It's one that we keep close eye on, but unfortunately just wasn't to be in 2021-22. He won it 2 seasons ago, but then last season he just, for whatever reason, didn't have a lot of offsides. Jamie Vardy came and took it off him. This time around, he was tied second, 26 offsides, equal coincidentally with Maxwell Cornet, who was briefly his teammate while they overlapped at Burnley in the first half of the season. But those two guys were both beaten by a fella who had 33 offsides, so a comfortable lead for this guy in taking the golden flag. Some bloke called Cristiano Ronaldo, I think is how you pronounce that. Never heard of him, but apparently he gets offside a lot. So there you go. Even more than the Woodsman.
Cristiano Wood.
Christopher and Cristiano, eh?
No, it's just Cristiano Wood. That's his name. From now on, we're referring to Cristiano Wood for his footballing excellence and offside deliverance. My statistic here, Wildcard, we had recently had the retirement of Katie Martin, White Ferns wicket-keeper, and the best contender to take over from Katie Martin in wicket-keeping, especially in the one-day format, is Wellington wicketkeeper batter Jess McFadyen, who has averaged over 40 in each of the last 4 seasons of List A cricket. The first 2, she averaged over 60, and then she went down to 49, then she went to 40. So her first 3 years of List A batting, 25, 15, and 10. Next season after that was 64, then 66. So she has averaged 40 plus for 4 consecutive seasons in List A cricket. And considering that some White Ferns, some of your favorite young White Ferns don't do anything in domestic cricket, the fact that Jess McFadyen is among the best batters in the last over the last 4 seasons of List A cricket is considerable, it's notable, and she is the best contender to take over from Katie Martin with the wicket-keeping gloves in one-day cricket. So keep an eye on for Jess McFadyen. Another contender might be Natalie Dodd, who is another veteran player. All the young contenders, they're averaging single digits with the bat in domestic cricket. So that's kind of the situation there for the wicket-keeping depth. And I wouldn't be surprised if some of those single-digit batters get promoted ahead of Jess McFadyen, because that's what White Ferns selectors love to do. Let's get deep into the Mangroves here, Wildcard. What have you found?
Last week I went, can't remember if it was Mangroves or Hot Takes off the top, but I talked about why the Wellington Phoenix is still poised to, to be able to carry on from this season and go even bigger next time around with a few more things, so long as they got some recruitment stuff right. On Friday's email, I wrote about the players who were coming off contract, just their situations, what I thought was likely to happen with that. Well, since then, we've actually had clarification. So we know what's going on with all these guys, and I can actually serve up a proper Wellington Phoenix, state of the squad heading into the off season here. So first of all, Louis Fenton, fella over my shoulder on the Zoom background, and it's probably his finest moment. He has retired, age 29. He's decided that professional football isn't the one anymore. He's, I think, the 5th all-time most capped Phoenix player, which is kind of nuts to think about. He's been around for ages. Don't know if he would have got another contract. Just saying, he was the backup right back. He didn't really seem to like to use him as in a wing back role. And when he did try to play him at left back, he gave away 2 penalties. So in a 5-0 loss to Central Coast. So I don't know that one was likely to go ahead. So he didn't really have a lot of, depth or whatever. And having spent 2 years basically living in Australia, 2.5 really, it wouldn't have been a lot of fun. And so I can certainly understand Fenton being I want to, look to some other things. So whether he would have got a new contract, I don't know, but he didn't want one. So all good. Best of luck to the fella moving forward. Plenty of great moments in a Phoenix shirt from that guy. A lot of them involving blood on his face or his, some bad ones in which he had a sling over his shoulder. It's always a fella who'd run through a brick wall. He's leaving. Also leaving, Joshua Soterio and James McGarry, both rumored pretty heavily to be heading to the Newcastle Jets. Probably guys they'd rather re-sign, but so it goes. Soterio was quite good for them in terms of giving them that option of a player who could run in behind, but he was also just consistently inconsistent. So can you find someone who can do what Soterio does, but is also a more reliable finisher and maybe a more well-rounded player? That's the trick. McGarry was back up to Sam Sutton, so that's why he's leaving. And I'm actually quite excited to see what he does in Newcastle. I think that's a really cool move because that's nothing to be shrugged off because he is an import for them. He's not an import for the Phoenix, but he is for Newcastle. They obviously really see something in him. Gary Hooper, we knew was going to leave. That's been confirmed. He wants to go back to the UK. With him, great striker, incredible efficiency in terms of goals and assists in the minutes he played, but he was just so injured all the time. That was just a bit too much of a problem. So they got to find someone who probably won't be as good as Gary Hooper, but hopefully who can be a lot more reliable and available. So that's the trick there. Gail Sandoval also leaving. Again, had his good moments, maybe faded away a bit too much towards the end of the season. I'd imagine fatigue was a bit of a factor there. A lot of games in a row, asked to do a big role. He was only on loan, so it would have been a bit of a trickier one. I think they could have negotiated a permanent deal and early release if they really wanted to, but the thing with imports is that there's a whole world to pick from. You don't really have to go the first guy that just happens to be there. So they're looking for someone else there. Matt Bozanovsky is also leaving. He was just an on-loan central defender to back up the squad. And young fellas, George Ott and Curtis Mogg have not been offered senior contracts. So they'll be leaving. Riley Bidwar, Jackson Manuel, and Henry Gray also not offered senior contracts, but because they're still under 20, they can just go back to the academy team. So there's no dramas there. They'll just play Weenix. Which leaves us with a squad list of Sutton Sermon, Van Hatten Payne, Wooden Old, Paulson Wayne, Pennington, Laws Ball, Elliott Lewis, Sale, and Rufer, which is 15 of their 23 spots already filled heading into the next season. The one big question mark here from last year's squad is Reno Piscopo. He has an offer on the table to return to the Phoenix. He also kind of wants to go back to Europe. He also has offers from, or at least interest from, other A-League clubs. He's said to be, that old chestnut, weighing up his options, considering his next steps, those kind of things. So I suspect he probably won't be back with the Phoenix. That leaves us with a wish list for next season of, well, ideally, at least 2 imports, hopefully 3. Maybe they can actually buy all 5 import spots, use them all next season. We'll see how that goes. Midfield cover for sure, given that Alex Roof is going to miss a good chunk of next season with his injury. Definitely a heap of attacking options needed, some of which might need to be locals because I don't think you can spend all your imports in that area. Maybe another fullback or 2 to cover McGarry and Fenton leaving. Another centre back wouldn't go astray. Frees up Tim Payne to play right back. Definitely a few things on the wish list. Definitely a bit of work to do over the off season, but Wellington Phoenix, 15 players already signed up. They definitely have a higher starting point than they usually do at this time of the year. And the most important thing of all is that on that wish list, no sign of the manager. Don't need to worry about that. Ofuk-Talai's under contract for another season. That much is all sorted. That level of continuity is there, and that's why I'm pretty optimistic about what the Phoenix can do heading back into next season.
Deep in my rugby league mangroves, where I do like to spend a lot of time just strolling around, catching the footy, losing a jandal, running it straight into a big pile of mangroves, which would be quite a bit of fun, I could imagine. We got the Cowboys and Broncos, 2 surprising NRL teams. Cowboys are 3rd, Broncos have jumped up to 5th. No one really had them in those positions. So what's the Kiwi-NRL factors for both teams? Cowboys, the South Auckland Rhinoceros, Jason Taumalolo. He's pretty good, and he's also 1st in total post-contact meters for the whole entire NRL. Shout out Isaiah Papali'i, he is 7th. Interesting player here for the Cowboys on the wing is Murray Taulangi, not Murray Tuiloma, Murray Taulangi. He was on the wing for the Cowboys, and I expect him to play for Queensland. He is from Auckland. I think he grew up playing Otahu rugby, and then he moved to Queensland as a teenager. And there is a chance that Michael Maguire's doing some behind-the-scenes stuff, and there is a chance that Aotearoa Kiwis, I don't know, there could be a wing combination of Murray Taulangi and Ronaldo Mulatalo. 2 dudes who have played Queensland, like junior Queensland origin, under 20s, let alone age group footy. Mulatalo could play for anyone coming up in the World Cup. Murray Taulangi's got a decision to be made between Queensland, Aotearoa, and even Samoa. He's only played Queensland rep footy, so expect him to play for Queensland there. Peta Hiku, resurgence for him. He's hunting an Aotearoa Kiwi starting centre spot, which I think he could grab. Mentioned Jason Taumalolo, he's fantastic. And we've also got Griffin Niami getting lots of bench opportunities as well. Really impressed with his mahi off the bench. Big up Griffin Niami. Greymouth Jr., the only lad from Greymouth in the NRL. Equally as funky for the Brisbane Broncos, because Te Maire Martin has played 5 games at fullback for the Brisbane Broncos. And the Brisbane Broncos have won all 5 games. So he's doing something right. Not a massive ball carrier. Like, he's not going to be racking up Roger Tuivasa-Sheck 200 meters, James Tedesco first receiver type of runs. But he's doing something. Whether it's an extra set of playmaking hands or organization of the defensive line, whatever it is, he is a key factor in the Brisbane Broncos' success. Also got Jordan Ricky, who has found some form in recent weeks. I think I wrote yesterday in my Kiwi-NRL Spotlight re-up, where I re-upped with some of the Kiwi-NRL Spotlights I've already delivered this season. Jordan Ricky's played 10 games, and his first 5 games, he wasn't doing much. Next 5 games, Broncos are winning, and he's doing heaps. He's getting tackle busts, he's scoring tries, he's making hard runs on the right edge, and he's really good defensively as well. High energy, high motor, great attitude. So Broncos' success is built around well, it's not built around Te Maire Martin, but he is a factor in that success. And now we can see how Broncos' success is bringing the best out of Jordan Ricky. Cowboys are a really interesting situation as well. Jason Taumalolo is fantastic. Obviously going to line up for Tonga in their upcoming international against Aotearoa. Murray Taulangi is proving himself to be an international representative caliber footy player, and he has to make some decisions around that. Peter Hiku's coming back into Kiwis contention, I reckon. And then we've got the only greymouth geezer in the entire NRL, Griffin Niami. So big up to those dudes. Of course, both teams and both clubs have Kiwi NRL players in reserve grade on the fringes of NRL footy, but those are the main dudes who are getting game time most weeks for two of the surprising up-and-coming teams in the NRL right now. Both are Queensland teams, and of course, we know that Southeast Queensland is the hub of Aotearoa Kiwi NRL footy, and the Brisbane Broncos are as much a part of that as any other club in the region, Gold Coast Titans or Redcliffe Dolphins. Cowboys do really good at recruiting out of Aotearoa as well, especially from the regions. But I did note in the Townsville Mal Meninga Cup team, which might have made the final, they had two props from Auckland. Jeremiah Matautia, this is all off the top of my head, so excuse me if the names are wrong, and Henry Tiutau. So those dudes are from Auckland, so it's a bit of a change from their regional recruitment. Big up those clubs. Question time here, Wildcard. I'm going to hit you with a question, and I'm going to ask you, who is your favorite Aotearoa NBL player right now? Obviously, the NBL has been going for a few weeks. Fantastic viewing time, around dinner time every night, it seems like. So it's right there in front of us. Good to see Aotearoa basketball thriving. Who's your favorite NBL player, Wildcat?
Yeah, well, I will give an honourable mention to Rob Lowe, who I think just because of the way he got iced out at the Breakers during a lot of last season, and to see him just like having fun, playing great basketball, just points and rebounds all over the show for a top of the table Auckland Tuatara team. I've loved that from him. Just he's got this combo going with fellow big man Chris Johnson, the American import. It's just they just get every rebound and they're scoring all the points. They're insane. Johnson, I think, is probably the MVP front runner after the first month. So honorable mention for Rob Lowe, but I don't think I can go past Hyrum Harris. Like Hyrum Harris he's so much fun because he's like it's like a Thriller minute thing with him because he literally does everything on the basketball court. He does every stat. He could like he could fill them all out. Like it's probably like the jump shot is something that needs to improve a little bit, just be a bit more of a consistent finisher. But like the last game I watched him play, he absolutely took over the game in the I think against the Tuatara actually. As the Hawke's Bay Hawks dealt in their first loss of the season, and Harris just absolutely took over in the third quarter. He had a monster dunk, which was outrageously good. But like he's one of the leading rebounders in the league as well. He gets assists. He can block shots. Great defender. He's just like when he's on the court, he's doing everything. Like anything you could imagine, he's out there doing it. And he had a great little run towards the end of the last NBL season. Has been re-signed as well by who was it? Adelaide, I think it was. He was playing at, which is always good news when that kind of thing's going on. There are a few other guys in a similar spot to him who are always really exciting to see in this thing, who are like development level players at the Aussie NBL and then come back here and get to play like leading roles. You know, like over the last few years, you can think of like Tane Samuel, I think is someone, Taylor Britt, guys like that. Isaac Davidson and players in that kind of situation. Hyrum Harris is part of that as well. And Hyrum Harris is the most fun just because, as I say, he does everything. He's always in the action. If he's on the court, your eyes are drawn to him naturally. Like you don't even have a choice. And a regular favorite of this podcast as well, Mr. Hyrum Harris. So shout out to him. Question back in return. Chanel Harris-Tavita, big old contract saga going on over the last, well, basically all season with the Warriors. It's now been effectively revealed his decision there is he's going to take a year off from rugby league and he's not going to play NRL for a season. What's going on with that? Like how do you sort of assess a move like that? What are your feelings on that?
Fantastic. Like for Chanel Harris-Tavita to step outside the professional sports bubble, like that's fantastic. Like just for him as a person to make that move, he obviously, like, I think what we are about is just doing whatever the fuck you want to do. You do what makes you happy, and that makes me happy. So he's doing what he wants to do, what makes him happy, and that is fantastic. I would think a lot of other athletes could benefit from such an approach, as opposed to like clinging on to their identity and clinging on to the material spoils of being a professional athlete. Chanel Harris-Tavita is doing the opposite, which makes him an avant-garde athlete now, not an athlete in the future. And anything avant-garde is fantastic around here at the Niche Case. We love a bit of avant-garde vibes. So shout out to Chanel Harris-Tavita and his decision, especially because he's got quite a good rugby league lineage in Aotearoa, quite a presence, especially in Auckland Rugby League. He would have been playing rugby league for a long time. He's been playing high-level rugby league at the various age group checkpoints for a long time. Like, all good. Just do whatever makes you happy. Like, it doesn't say anything about the Warriors. It just says he's just doing what he wants to do. So that's what we learn about him. So it's just a fantastic move all round. From the Warriors' perspective, they've got a very similar player in the halves right now, Dejan Arce, who runs the footy like Harris-Tavita, smacks blokes in defense like Harris-Tavita. He might have a bit more finesse with his kicking game. That's probably the only difference I can really see. But from the Warriors' perspective, they don't really lose anything because they've already got it. Like Dejan Arce is really similar to Harris-Tavita. And I think the Warriors, it just puts onto all that contract saga stuff that was lingering and loitering into a bit of context. Because obviously Chanel Harris-Tavita didn't want to play anymore. And it took him a while to get to that decision. And that's why it's actually cool, because all the Australian media and some of the New Zealand media were like, oh, Harris-Tavita, he's going to leave the Warriors. I even wrote before this news came out yesterday that I'd love to see Harris-Tavita leave the Warriors and do an Isaiah Papali'i, do a Marata Niokore. But all the news and headlines was around his contract situation, but it wasn't about that. Then none of the contract stuff was even relevant, because Chanel Harris-Tavita was weighing up what he wanted to do with his life, which is very avant-garde in the professional rugby league landscape, where it's all about money, gambling, domestic violence, and all that shit. Aotearoa's representatives in the NRL are very different. A lot of the youngsters are highly professional. They are putting their whole, they're moving to Australia with their families. That's how seriously they are taking this career pathway. And then you've got someone like Harris-Tavita, a young bloke from Aotearoa, who is willing to put himself first and do what he wants to do. So not only is it admirable for Chanel Harris-Tavita, but I think it represents the mana that a lot of the Kiwi-NRL juniors have as well. And a bit of a culture clash, because that's coming up against the Aussie old school culture, where it is gambling, it is, going to the Greyhounds and having a beer at the pub. A lot of these young Kiwi kids, they're not having any of that shit. They're just there to be the best rugby league players they can be the best athletes they can be. And I think there's a bit of that's part of the Kiwi-NRL takeover. Let me just say that. Musical Jam Wildcard. To be honest, I've kind of been off hip hop. I've realized that I'm losing a lot of interest in hip hop, which has been a bit of a learning to let just simmer within me. But I'm still tapped in, and there are still projects that really catch my attention, like the new project from Boldy James and Real Bad Man, Killing Nothing, groovy hip hop. Boldy James is telling stories from the streets, one of my favorite rappers, Boldy James, and Real Bad Man. His production is pretty funky. And then you've also got a project from Czarface, which is very comic-y and superhero-orientated hip-hop. They've got a new album called Zarmageddon. So if you are a fan of that type of hip-hop, check in. Quite avant-garde. Peep the theme. What is your musical jam, Wildcat?
Couple albums by Kiwi songstresses, I think might be an appropriate word. Ernie Bell and Kendall Elise, both very good. Ernie Bell's is more recent. I think I stumbled on both of them on a Bandcamp feature on like Australasian Americana type music. I wouldn't really say that either of them really fit into that category strictly, but I think well, anyway, Ernie Bell's album came out about February or a couple months ago. A little bit of a like exotica feel to it. Very cool. Like that one a lot. Kendall Elise is also very good. Her album actually came out last year though, late last year. So I missed that one when it came around the first time, but that was those two were both Bandcamp recommendations that came together. So Emma Ruth Rundle also got a new album out. Warpaint got an album out. So plenty of stuff to get around to, along with what is an ever increasing list of stuff that I haven't quite been able to catch up to. But it's almost the end of the month, so I'm going to get my album reviews up for the website as well. So I will have to be listening to a lot of this stuff over the next few days.
Big up to our monthly album jukebox. So if you do, if you are interested in the Niche Keisha's musical taste and a big skew towards Aotearoa music as well, every Monday night we've got our weekly playlist that we upload to the website, and then at the end of every month we share our favorite albums and projects from that past month, and we do a little paragraph about those albums. So if you're here for sports but you also love music, we love Aotearoa music first and foremost, in the same way we love Aotearoa sport first and foremost, but we do have quite avant-garde taste in international music to some extent. Like, we're not going fucking, the modern Mozart or any of that shit, but it is like different music that we do enjoy here at the Niche Case. So big it up to the music department sitting over there with their headphones on. Shout out.
Yeah, I don't know who the modern Mozart is, but I don't know. But we've got the avant-garde stuff on the thing, so we can always something for Chanel Harris-Tavita to listen to on his travels. I think maybe as he goes on his own avant-garde path, we can align those things.
Big up Aotearoa. That is the Niche Cage Variety Show, and we appreciate your presence here with us. Hopefully, we can find some enlightenment soon enough. And when you're saying like the disappointed ego, you're kind of saying there's no celebration. But when you're talking about the disappointed ego, in my mind, I was envisioning my soul, like my pure soul energy, just like, if the ego's in the corner, disappointed and sad, my pure soul energy, I imagine for enlightenment, would be like just like bright and radiant, just smiling like, whoa, yeah. So I will push back on the celebration achievement.
Maybe it's like an outer body experience or something, like you, if you can like imagine a metaphor where the ego is the body and then the soul is something like steps beyond the body, and then that's where your celebration comes in. I don't know, tapping back into the universal energy, something like that.
Maybe it's all the birds that are coming around you. Maybe it's all the, the nature energy around you. Who knows? We're just
other
here.
people,
Yeah, well, definitely. As above, so below. We're just here having a kōrero and chat about Aotearoa matters. Big it up, stay beautiful. Kia kaha, cha-cha.